Welcome back to the channel. Today I am super excited to have an extremely incredible, talented creative, Armzy, on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, it's been, great to connect, have someone who's going to drop so much gems, I know. And yeah, do you want to just give a quick intro to yourself, like where you're from, and what's your vibe for 2025?
My name's Ahmed. Everyone calls me Armzy. Started off in 2012 with photography.
Mhm.
And yeah, like what's that, like 13 years now? Think about it. I've only just realized that. No, that's crazy because I've been so much in work mode. But right now, I'm focused on like creative strategy, content producing, and kind of like just brand and social communications.
Amazing. And as I said, what's your vibe for 2025? What's your motto?
Double down.
Yeah.
Double down. That's it.
Let's get to work.
Yeah.
So what would you say, my first question is, what would you say is the dream that you're still chasing? As you said, 2012, it's been like over a decade. But yeah, what's your current dream?
Independence, really and truly, like creating my own way of living, and just kind of having a more independent impact to the industries that I'm in.
Mm-hmm. And you started with photography. Do you want to just discuss, like, how did you get your first opportunities, and how have you been navigating that career?
Initially, I grew up with like a lot of artists and producers and musicians, and I was always invited to like music videos, like studio sessions and everything. I was always an observer. That's what I've realized. Like I was always observing so many different parts of like the process, but was never documenting. I'm like, why did I not document that? Like, why did I not do that? And then one of my friends at the time, he had a child on the way. He used to have a YouTube channel, and he was like, listen, I'm gonna pack it in. I want to focus on having a family. So I was like, all right. And then he heard that I wanted to get into like photography and media, and he was like, here, take this camera. And then since that, didn't know how to use the camera settings, not how to use anything on there. I'm just like learning and figuring things out. I've always been a kid that loves to figure things out, like open the radio when it's broken and try figure things out. Like when my dad used to fix the fridge, I'm like looking and everything. Like when the boiler man comes and fixes things, I'm always like trying to figure things out. So I've always been a person that has been an observer and really loved the process of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So would you say, like, your creative journey with photography and videography, has that been completely self-taught? Were there people on the way that have like taught you bits and pieces? How would you advise someone who's trying to get into it to learn?
It's been probably 80% self-taught and 20% mentoring. I think mentoring should never be overpowered and you figuring things out. I think when it comes to mentoring, clarity is the most important thing, and it helps you speed through all of the mistakes that might take you years to kind of develop. But I think for the first like 5-6 years, I was just so focused on just figuring things out myself. Like, just always asking people if they had any shoots coming up, if they had anything. I was always throwing myself in the deep end, even not like while still learning the camera equipment. But then it got to a point where mentors were discovering me rather than the other way around, because of that sheer will for myself to put myself in that vulnerable position. So yeah, that's where like that certain I was more mentored by like directors and producers, because that's where a lot of like production really is focused on. So yeah, certain people would kind of be like, oh, like, what are you doing? Where are you trying to maneuver to? I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I'm just like really excited when it comes to the creative and music scene. And I realized that I was developing media through music. So through like shooting certain single covers and BTS and all of that stuff. I didn't know I was racking up content for music, where everyone else around me at the time when it came to media was focused on like fashion and growing e-commerce and stuff at the time, and social media that was growing at the time. And yeah, like I was just getting um I wouldn't say scouted by mentors, but then when I get to a production, it's like, oh, like, what are you doing next week? Like, let's have a coffee. And then that's when I'll be able to like ask them everything under the sun. Like, how do you do this? Like, what's your thought process? I always love asking directors and producers, what's your thought process behind the thing, let alone executing on something? Because I feel like that helps with so much of a direction. And yeah, like it's been more what's it called? It's been more self-taught, and then bits of mentoring as well.
Amazing. You know, meeting these mentors and people that have helped you, was that predominantly on set and in person, or was there also kind of like a social media network that you were doing? What's been the most like effective way for you to connect with people like in the industry?
More in real life.
Okay, nice.
More in real life, and especially pre-COVID as well. Everything was much more like, productions were heavy, bubbling, and all of that. So when I heard that someone's having a music video, I'd go. When I hear someone's doing a fashion shoot or an e-commerce shoot or even a product shoot, I'm there. So I was, even if I wasn't a part of the production, I was there observing, seeing how people are working, how people are interacting with each other. The most important thing I've realized through that period of time is like, you're meant to feed your team. That is a really important thing. Like, feed your team. There was so many people that would never feed their team, and like, a hungry army won't fight for you. So that's the important thing as well. Like, I was just so like soaking everything up like a sponge. Like, whether it's a good trait or a bad trait, I had to learn it to be better.
Mm-hmm. And who would you say were like your best memories and favorite people to work with when you were coming up that really know the difference?
That's an interesting one. I have to give a shout out to Nathan Hector, because he's the reason why I got on the D Block tour.
Okay.
Their first ever tour was like, I wasn't directly shooting for them. I was shooting more for Nathan Hector because of his rise for hosting shows. But when I was able to tap in with D Block and their management in their first ever tour, like understanding their way of maneuvering, how they interact with the audience and stuff, like that opportunity came from me shooting my other friend's show and Nathan hosting it. And then from that, he was like we've been knowing about each other, but when he saw me on work more, and he's like, listen, got the opportunity to do D Block's tour, to host it. Would you like to come along? And then I'm like, but by the time he didn't even finish the sentence, I'm like, just give me a pillow and the floor, I'm there. You know what I'm saying? So that really leaped me to understand that, like, just from a camera, it can give you so much opportunities to work with great artists as well.
And for like the creative that doesn't necessarily have that connect, you know, isn't around people in the industry, what would be your piece of advice for them to be able to like build their portfolio and like get some experience like that?
Just test and experiment. What I used to do at the same time of learning my way on the camera was kind of just soaking up and destructing how other people were doing their media and production. So when I see a billboard, or I see like a visual advert or something like that, or a commercial, I'm just always trying to break things down, like trying to like, what's the color scheme like what's the dialogue, what's the tone, what's the lighting being like, how are they conversing with each other. So I was really using Pinterest as well. Pinterest is such an important tool to really kind of soak up a lot of creative direction as well, to know that to know what you want to shoot as well, like, or like try to mimic things as well. Like, I learned a lot by trying to remake certain shots and stuff. Like, I still do that till this day. Like, if there's something that I really like, I'll try to remake it and make it in my own. So yeah, just like learning by remaking and studying.
I think there's a lot. I'm really glad you said that, because I think a lot of people are scared to do that because they think, oh, I don't want to just like imitate someone else, or, you know, I've got to come up with something original. And then they get kind of like a creative block where they never end up creating anything, because they're like, you know, I want to create something original. So that's really good that, you know, that you're encouraging people to take inspiration, keep creating, and just don't have anything that's going to hold you back in that sense.
And sorry to cut you, like, most times it's the things outside of the creative aspects that you're doing that brings you inspiration. Like, for me, I go to a lot of galleries, I go to like a lot of shows, I have dinners with people to converse in different industries. So that's an important thing, trying to do things outside of what you do that brings you inspiration. Because sometimes, like, you might, like, for me, when I have a conversation with a random stranger on how their day is, or we just kind of go through that convo, then something they might say might help me build a question for like an interview series or a documentary I might be doing and stuff like that. So you have to get inspiration outside of where your main inspiration is, which is a paradox in itself.
I love that piece of advice. So you also do videography, which is like, you know, it's quite rare. I feel like people are wanting and kind of pursuing to doing both at the moment, because they know, like, you know, social media marketing, video marketing, super important these days. What was your kind of decision process of doing the transition from photography to videography?
I think I naturally fell into it because I felt like with photography, it just focused on just that. Like it was just still. I wanted something moving. I wanted something that like was consistent, that people can kind of just watch rather than, oh, okay, it's an image and then kind of move on. Yeah, I fell into it accidentally when I started filming more BTS. Then I started to do like small net videos, one take videos, and that's where I was like, aha, like there's more people wanting videos. Even though, so I still had my eye for photography, and then I just kind of every video I shoot, I always try to remind myself it's a still. Like each scene is a still, and then that's how I build my creative direction around it. And yeah, like just making sure that I was documenting like everything, no matter what my creative direction is, always focused on documenting things. And then yeah, just the evolution on starting from photography to video.
So did you essentially have to like start again in a sense of like you took the same blueprint of in terms of like taking opportunities? Did you have to take kind of like unpaid opportunities to make that transition when you
Yeah.
first started out? Like how was it at the beginning?
What I wasn't getting paid for nothing. If anything, I was probably paying to be there, like in that sense of traveling, like expenses, all of these things. Like for years, like good 3-4 years, I wasn't getting paid nothing. I was like, my thing was experience, trying to build network. I was naturally building network rather than thinking like in the forefront of my brain, okay, I'm not gonna get paid. I'm gonna create a connection. I was naturally doing that because I love connecting with so many different people. But I think that's a underrepresented thing of today as well, because everyone's expected to be paid in the content realm. I feel like it's important to leverage that free connection or that free project that you're doing to leverage it for a project now. So for me, like when I'm telling creatives now that try to recreate or try to build 3-4 different free projects that you can leverage to get a paid job, so you have a robust portfolio now, because your portfolio speaks to the client or the brand that you want to work with. But because if you we're not in the age of pitching as much with words anymore. We're focused on like, okay, cool, can this person execute the idea I have, and are they credible if I speak to 3-4 different people? That's why like most people within the creative network are given jobs, because it's like, oh, I know this person, they're a good vibe and their portfolio is good and whatnot, compared to a CV. Like the age of the written CV is gone now. That's what I feel like. That's why you're seeing much more like video CVs and stuff. So it's important to do free work, but leverage it in the way for the direction that you want to move to. That's it.
And I think a lot of creatives are kind of a bit confused or not sure on how much work they should be putting in to land a client. Like, so for example, when it comes to like decks, like pitch decks, or like a treatment or a brief, like, would you advise creatives to create that fully for a client before they land a job to show? Or is that something you should do once you've got the job? Like, how much work
It's
do you
interesting.
feel people should be putting in?
I think there
the job?
I think there needs to be a buffer time between your first connection with that brand or the artist you want to work with and the pitch you're trying to make. Like, understand where they're wanting to go, understand what the deliverables are, soak in all this information before you make that pitch deck. So when you make the pitch deck, it's a checklist for what they're looking for. I feel like pitches now are more salesy than like trying to make people understand the idea. That's two different things, especially because I'm around a lot of people in like corporate marketing and stuff like that as well. Like the way they focus on trying to build pitches is not only focused on the how do I put it? Not only focused on the direction for their idea, but it's just like, oh, like everything is about sales, everything's about turnover, everything's about KPIs and stuff. I'm about eliminating that first and foremost, because that naturally like comes with it. It's about, does it translate into the idea that they wanting to put on a billboard, or do they wanting to put on social media or on TV? If you can take that into your pitch, you'll win your pitch.
And in terms of the expectations that creatives should have when working with clients and brands, like how much should they expect to have kind of like creative control and their kind of creative style on the deliverables that the brand wants? And how have you balanced that, and what kind of advice can you give to people?
I think, like I was saying, it's just about understanding what the brand wants from you first. and what they want in general first, and then what they want from you. Once you get all of that into consideration, you have that negotiation kind of feel on, okay, like how much creative direction you can input, or maybe the brand might be going a specific way, or the artist might be going a certain way, and you're like, you know what, maybe if you tried this, you can tap into this audience, or you can kind of communicate in this way. I feel like most brands and artists have a sense of direction of where they're wanting to go, and some are kind of locked out of wanting to get extra perspective on where they're wanting to go with creatives. So for me, it felt like just before COVID, it felt like I was a creative tool. It felt like I was executing for people. You know, it didn't feel like, even though like I was giving people creative direction, it was like, okay, yeah, I understand, but we want you to do this. And then for me, it's like, okay, cool, like, let's just get it done. Like, I want to get that on my portfolio and stuff. Don't get me wrong, that still taught me a lot of things, but over that time, like, it's when you give in and you don't have that stance, that's when you get bulldozed over to be a creative tool. So I think creators really need to bounce on understanding why that brand or that artist has come to you. Like, oh, what stood out from my portfolio for you to reach out to me? And then they'll kind of be like, oh, do you know what you did in this edit was sick, or that, how did you do that? Oh, like that, the way you question with people needs to change so they can understand like what you can bring to the table.
And who would you say your like favorite brands and artists that you've worked with so far are? And yeah, what makes them so impressive for you?
I'm not gonna lie, this recent one I did with LV, because the way it came about was so natural. Shout out to Tejon, he's an artist as well. The reason why it happened, because it felt like LV were experimenting at the time. Like they're so high benchmark when it comes to content fashion, that it felt like they just went loose with it and focused on like UGC content. Like I shot everything on a phone, which is absolutely crazy. Shooting LV on a phone, like, it's such a crazy thing. So yeah, I think that was the reason. The D Block one was an interesting one as well. Being on stage for Tion Wayne show, Chip as well, Chip's tour. So the Brighton segment, I was doing the content for that, and Nathan Hector as well. Like that was an interesting one. I'm thinking what else. I've done something for a bike company, Sinis Motorcycles. That was an interesting one because that took me outside my box. I like to weirdly work with brands that take me outside my box sometimes. So it's not only like fully focused on the scene or on the culture as well. I like to kind of go outside. Like I'm trying to work with like, right now I'm trying to work with like more like fintech brands and like biotech brands, and kind of fuse that with the culture and communication and stuff. So the things that I'm working on now are going into that sense of direction of the question you said. But my previous history, the most recent one would be the LV one, because that has been like the pinnacle. And not only that, it's just eliminated that you don't need a camera or a super big setup or a massive production with such a brand as LV. Like I've done it with an iPhone 11 Pro. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Amazing, congrats.
Thank you.
And you know, when you started this journey as a creative, like, was it specifically music that you wanted to get into, or did you have kind of like other clients and industries in mind? Like, what would you recommend for someone starting out? Like, should they niche down, or, you know, should they just kind of like work with a whole range of
I'm happy you said this, Zara, yeah, because you see this niche thing, I've got a beef with it, yeah. Like it's not about the niche that you're going into, like you are the actual niche.
Love that.
You are actually the niche. Like you can say you hone in on the industry, that's one thing, but a niche market, that's a whole different thing. And I feel like that's why like the way we are with content now is about niche this, niche that. Like some people don't even know what the word means. You get what I'm saying? So it's like people are just pincering in on that specific word that I have to go like minimal. Like social media and like where we are with the internet is a global platform. So for you to only specifically cater to one demographic or one industry is such a, like, it kind of blocks you from your other blessings from everything else. And I feel like that takes away from your own USP. Like you are your own niche, you are your own USP. Otherwise, if you go into a niche, you're just going to be seen as everyone else in that sector. And then it's going to be hard to pivot. That's the important thing.
Okay, amazing. So in terms of thinking, you know, if you're a creative and you're thinking of yourself as a niche, then like, how would you advise creatives to like technically like PR themselves and put themselves out there like on socials? Like what are the kind of ways they can kind of like personal, brand themselves and get their kind of like reputation and name out there?
I would say talking a lot about their process and their inspiration of their art direction. I feel like everyone is focused on like you need to make content for this demographic or this market or this industry, but it's like, what do you want? What do you see? What does your eye see? What does your heart want? Like when you start to put, that's why like you might see a lot of my tweets, it's mostly like a lot of my thoughts, my ideas. Like most of that style of content for me has gone and leaked more than my actual structured content, which is crazy to me because that's where the world is focused on, this structured niche stuff. But anything that is more natural is what people gravitate towards because they're like, you know what, I think like that, So it's important to really, how do I put it? Like you just need to tap into that part of you that like really wants to say something. Like whether it's a stance on an issue, whether it's a issue that might be happening in an industry, like your unique voice is what people will resonate with because people are scared to say something or scared to share that same value as you.
And I think it's kind of like what we sometimes recommend artists, like it's not just about the music, for example. Same way it's not just about the photography or the videography. It's about who you are, what other interests you have. Like that's how you're going to connect with people more than just like the thing itself, right? So I think that's a really...
See, how can you do that when you niche into something? Because now your communication, the way you're branding yourself is only for that market. So it's gonna be weird when you're trying to pivot into something different because people are like, oh, I know you for this. Do you get what I'm saying? And this is why it's been hard for people to put a finger on what I do sometimes because it's like 1 minute I'm in this industry, 1 minute I'm working with this artist or working with this brand. So it's like that's where people are like, okay, I'm just gonna look into what Armzy does and who he is, and that's why like the Zex and the Ashley Verses and everyone are able to, because it's like when you see that piece of work, it's them, rather than okay, they're shooting for magazines or shooting for brands. Like that's the thing. Like, and with what we were talking about, personal branding, we're in an important age now where personal branding leaps bounds than actual brand.
Mm-hmm. So okay, so if we're leading with like almost having like a strong identity, having your own kind of like stamp and style of creativity, how can creatives like protect their work and ideas when it comes to clients? And it's 2025. We mentioned like the decks and like pitching ideas. Like what are the ways that creatives can actually also protect their ideas?
I think they need to start reading into intellectual property, like understanding the intellectual property office, understanding that once, like you see the production team behind these cameras, like once they click the button, like they own the right to that. You get what I'm saying? Like understanding those things blew my mind to understand why certain brands underpay certain artists and creatives because they're not understanding on the actual laws when it comes to content. Once I started to kind of go down that rabbit hole and kind of self-teach myself and speak to lawyers about this, it really like opened up my mind to understand that like bigger commercial brands really like manipulate the creative scene to get the deliverables they want and minimally pay creators and artists, which is a crazy thing to me. So understanding intellectual property first, like you could go to the Gov website and like it takes 15 minutes. Like you watch a 20-minute episode on Netflix, like change your mind state, your mind frame to like start reading things to protect yourself. So then when a brand is talking to you to say, hey, like we've only got X amount for this budget, and the talk about leasing, okay, like cool, like this is for your production, but what about leasing? Like where are you trying to put it? Are you trying to put it on a billboard? Are you putting it on commercial? Once you start to speak that language, they're going to take you much more seriously, so.
And in terms of like you navigating the industry, have you ever had a manager? Have you thought about getting one, or like being part of an agency? Like what are your thoughts on like when is the best time to do that?
That's an interesting question because I've tried to get represented. I've approached some places. People wanted to represent me as well, but I don't know. It's just been a weird thing. I feel like I'll be like a caged parrot. You know what I'm saying? I can't fly out whenever I want or do whatever I want. You know what I'm saying? Like I love communicating on my own emails. I love scheduling my own things. Like, it's just, I just love that part of me. Yeah. And plus, like, it makes me control my day and what I want to do. But yeah, I've had close deals with being signed to an agency and all these things, but there's just something that is like, because I'm always changing and always pivoting things, it's like, how do I, like, if I sign to an agency, they're gonna box me in a certain way, but it's a case by case basis. Just because I said it doesn't mean any creative has to do it. It's just, you got to find it in your heart to know what you really want.
And I think that's a perfect answer in terms of, like, I think even when I speak to artists as well, a lot of people hold themselves back because they're waiting for a manager to do certain things. Like, say, for example, they don't feel as confident with writing emails or communication side or the logistics or whatever it is. They then say to themselves, oh, it's because I need a team or because I need a manager. But I think you just literally shown how, like, you can kind of take control of your business and, just get to work.
That's important. Sorry to cut you. Like that, I think that's an important thing, trying to, like, so many artists, even till this day, like, are always emailing me and DMing me, oh, can you manage me? Can you manage me? And so that, because I speak to a lot of creators, not only creators, but artists, on how they should, like, focus on their music catalog and how they can position themselves. Forget about the content side. Like, I speak, like, on a holistic perspective to artists, and a lot of them ask me to manage them, but I keep telling them, you need to learn all of those ropes first to know what you need managing for. That's the important thing, because it's just laziness to be like, you know what, so I need a book or I need to write this email. If you don't learn those things, someone's going to take the mick out of your career down the line. And that's an important thing. Like, it don't take much to self-educate your things, or even ask past managers or people, artists that have managers and stuff, on how that relationship works. People just want management. What do you need management for? That's the most important thing to ask.
100%. And I think, like, so far, this conversation has been, like, such a testimony of you showing how, like, one, you self-taught yourself your skills, and you've got yourself out there, you've shown up, you've built your connections and stuff. And, like, in terms of going back to when we discussed the transition from photography to videography, how important do you think it is for, like, creatives to invest in themselves and learn more skills, for example, doing both? Or, like, do you think it's essential nowadays, or do you think like what's your take on it?
I think it's no harm to acquire extra skills, because you'll never know when you need to activate them. And I've been such a person of, like, acquiring skills. Like, I'm always learning a new skill, always gaining something, because it's like, you'll never know when you need it. Like, for me now, I know vast amount of skills. That's why I can move the way I'm moving. But I think, like, I think your heart will tell you what you really want, and if you really listen to it, and then you can use your mind to really, like, soak stuff up. And what I mean is, like, if you start off in photography, you'll never know, like, just by learning how to, what frames per second is, and ISO, and all of these things that is video that you can kind of soak up, you'll never know that you'll be like, oh, maybe I want to experiment with this, or maybe, like, you get it from experimentation is where you're really gonna learn. So if you're limited to just one skill set, there's only so much you can experiment and learn with. So I think, yeah, like, try to learn the skills around your main skill, and then you'll know if it's right or wrong, or you can just drop it. Like, there's no harm in learning it.
Love that. And I'm curious to know, like, has there ever been something that's happened that you really felt like, I actually fucked up? Like, I'm working with a client and you feel like, you've taken a job, got into it. What has been one of your, like, steepest learning curves?
Backing up your footage, back up the backup, and then back that up after as well. That is one important thing, because you'll be like, yeah, I'll get to that tomorrow, and then a bit of rain might hit your bag, or your drink might spill in your bag, and everything's done for. How are you meant to talk to the brand after that? That level of professional. Oh yeah, like, sorry, like, my juice spilled in my bag. Like, you need to back up, like, have procedures, like, have like your own SOP. Your operating procedure, like, have your system there, so things are robust. Like, make sure you're on time for shoots, make sure that you reply promptly to emails, like, make sure you're doing these things, because, like, once that laziness creeps in, you're not going to develop.
And in terms of, like, advice for people that, say, haven't been on a proper production set before, what advice would you give them for like something they might not expect?
You'd be surprised where a DM can take you. Just DM people, email people, comment on people's things. You'll never like give people their flowers. Like giving people their flowers has gotten me to certain places and certain rooms that I never would have expected. Never would have expected. Just by me reaching out saying, "Oh, I love what you did in this thing. Have you got another production coming up? I'd love to just observe. Hey, even if you need a hand, I'm here. I've got a car, or I'm here at your disposal. I just want to learn. And don't even pay me." You know, some people are not wanting to put themselves in that vulnerable position. You know, like to I wouldn't say needy, but like to in a perspective where they're curious on things and wanting to learn. Everyone's just like, oh, like this is what my budget is. This is what you get it. Like eliminate that. Like eliminate that. That will come down the line. Like money is a byproduct of these processes. You know, so just send that DM. Like sometimes I'll be like in my bed like this at 4 a.m. and I'm chatting to a brand like, who do I speak to for this video project? And then by the time, like, you don't know, by the time you wake up, what DM you're gonna get back. Like DM people, email people. Like there's LinkedIn, there's software out there where you can find who works at that brand and what their email is, and do a cold outreach. You know, like these things are important. Like everyone wants to do that just online, but also go to these networking events. You never know who you're gonna network. You might be one step away from Kendrick. You might be one step away from Drake. Never know.
So true, so true. And what would you say, like for you personally, has been like the biggest challenge of navigating your career as a creative?
Knowing what I want. I think because there's so much overstimulation on what the demand is for like in the music scene and the creative scene and what brands want, what consumer behavior like I really dive into like consumer psychology and their behaviors as well, and how that translates from content and how you can communicate that. Things are always changing, so that shouldn't change you. And I feel like so many creatives are changing themselves to change into that industry and to get that bag and whatnot. So I feel like the first things first, before picking up that camera, before editing, like understand what you want from it first before doing any action.
Yeah, that's a really, really good answer, because I was going to ask you, like, what do you think are the biggest kind of opportunities for new creatives if they were to be kind of like focusing on a vision and a career outcome from it?
I think right now, like my ego was so heavy on not doing UGC stuff. My ego was like, no, you need to be doing everything on camera, even my own stuff. And then once I started to shoot stuff on my phone, I was like, what am I like? Now I understand why these content creators and whatnot are so quick to the mark. Like my hack for my phone is I use an app called Black Magic Studio. So the Black Magic camera, they've got free software that you can use on your phone, and you can literally reprogram your camera phone to a camera. So you can change the ISO, you can change like all of the settings you do on a camera, so you're utilizing it even better. So yeah, like like people are quick. Like for me, like if you ask me how I did this or who did I speak to, and I'll give you these things. Like I don't mind giving gems out, as they say, and all these things, because I'm not that person and they're not me. That's that 10% that people will never get.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
You've got to have an abundance mindset in terms of like...
That's the thing. 10 years ago, most of the scene was like this. Close to the cars were close to their face. Gatekeeping so much. The gate is wide open. It's so wide open, people are still scared to step through. You get it? But so for me, it's like, oh, like even with the LV thing, like when I put up a story, which has been my most engaged story to date, when I was like, yo, like, thank you for LV for inviting us to do that. And I shot with an iPhone. Everyone just latched onto the iPhone bit of it, because it's that 10 years of experience that I've had with cameras that made me work with what I had. You know, I was meant to rent a camera that they didn't. I got told that shoot like 5 hours before I had my phone. I could have just said, I couldn't do it. It was LV. Like I had to use my phone. I had to make something happen. You know, so like just utilize the things you have around you. That's another thing. Like I feel like a lot of creators are locked into that mindset. Oh, I need this camera. I need this equipment. I need all of these things. So instead of that, think about what you have first, you know, and always share. Like I always love learning things and sharing. That's an important thing.
Love that. And in terms of like, you know, because now you said you do a lot of like consulting and content strategy and stuff. what are some of the roles that, you know, new photographers, for example, or videographers might not actually know about in the industry that they could look into?
Interesting. Obviously right now, the artists right now are in need of content. So that's a potential bag for creators to team up with a couple of artists, create a retainer system for you. So like that's the thing. I feel like the world of like content is going into retainer systems rather than like
Do you want
one-off
to just
payment.
explain for people that don't know?
So a
what
retainer system is like a monthly payment for a service. So it can be a 3-month thing, 6-month thing, or a year thing, depending on what your flexibility is or the budget or whatnot. So instead of that being paid outright one time for that project and that deliverable, you just lower your rate so you can have a consistent revenue. You know, like the whole world is moving to that. Like the one of the first, I would say, industries is like the clothing industry with Klarna. Like instead of paying out for your whole outfit, you're paying month by month. Creative services are slowly being like that. Like I've helped certain studios turn their hourly rate spaces to be monthly membership systems, and that's created such a revenue for them. So that's when eureka moment of like, oh, like, okay, cool. Like the whole world is going into like retainer systems and that. So that's a quick bag that like creators can do. Like team up with like 3-4 artists that are on a roll with constant content they need, and then just create a package with them where you can link them every week and to create that month's worth of content and stuff.
That is such good advice. And in terms of like artist content strategy for 2025, what advice do you have for artists?
I would say don't do the first 3-second, hey, grab you type of thing. I feel like it's a paradox in itself what I'm saying, because the consumers, even ourselves, we're engineered to the first few seconds when we're scrolling. I think just try to be as natural. Don't be overpowering when it comes to what your concept is. And what I mean by that is like some people out of their artist branding will take them elements outside of themselves into something completely different. Like even some of my friends have done this where like they're sitting in a stool and then there's a rope there and the car's pulling them away. It's those things that like cool, like that's engaged me, but like how is that actually converting to me becoming your listener? I feel like if artists started to question themselves on like who is my listener? Like I always talk to artists about like picture like when you're playing the audience playing that music. Like right now it's heartbreak season and all this with like Valentine's Day and that. So like picture that person when you're making that heartbreak song, them like just breaking out of a relationship and they're driving down the motorway and then they're sobbing their eyes. Like think about like where your perceived listener is and how they're interacting with your music, and then you can cater your content around it. I feel like right now everything is pushy. Like the timeline right now is, hey, I'm this artist, this is what I am. Music discovery is one of the most important things that has been lost in this last while. Like I get really happy when I discover an artist. You know, there isn't that much now because I'm getting bombarded with like 20 artists in like 12 scrolls. You know what I'm saying? So it's like not try to make your things overpowering and just be you. Like and it's very, I feel like it's more harder to be you now than it ever has been before, which is such a paradox. Like, and just being you gets you places. But everyone's just fighting on the timeline right now. Cool, they're fighting on the timeline, but how is that actually converting from a click to a save of that song and then like a follow? That's the most important thing. If you start to engineer your mind frame like that, your content will be much more better.
And do you think, like, in terms of the social media platforms, is there anything that's a bit kind of like underrated that artists should use more of, like in terms of a feature or like something that you've seen on the platform?
I would say lives and Insta stories. Like you get more engagement on your Insta story than you are on your timeline. And like right now, I've got 4,000 followers. Not all 4,000 followers are gonna be on the timeline at the same time. Not even 10% of them are. But when people are quickly going onto the app, what's the first thing? The stories. So you can see, you can catch up with everyone very quickly. Like with just one thumb, you can scroll through everyone instead of like scrolling through and trying to find something for hours. Like on your lunch break, you can quickly see what people are on. Like for me, my personal content and artists that I've kind of made them think to engage more in their stories, they've been getting bigger engagements on their stories because that's the new thing now. You know, what we'll talk about the live streamers, like connecting yourself to streamers and connecting yourself to people that are creating their platforms or having an interview piece is a really important thing. It doesn't have to, I feel like with music content right now as a marketing tool, it shouldn't always be focused on the track itself. And if it is, it's about how it's subtly placed. You know, I think people like if you scroll to a certain artist, and they might have the same verse over 6 videos and stuff like that. Like, change it up. Maybe shorten like maybe have 15 seconds of like verse 2 and then have something that is completely different or relevant, because certain people are just outfit change and a location change. It doesn't give me that sense of like why I should follow you. I don't even know like who you are as a person, if that makes sense. And that's a more important thing to me personally.
And things like with the Insta stories, like, is there a kind of like blueprint of how many you should post? Like, you know, have you seen any kind of like trends with that? Because I know like some people prefer to kind of like do a few and then let it kind of like
24-hour roll. Yeah.
Or
I'm kind of
keep
like
it
that.
going, or
Yeah.
like
I think
like, what's the point of too much?
Yeah, I think you will see that when your engagement on your stories drop. That's when you kind of stop it. But you have to, like, the algorithm only feeds you what you're testing and what you're consuming. So, and what you're putting out there as well. Like, if like 300 people in like 2 hours have engaged with a specific post that you've written rather than shared, I feel like sharing and writing a post or uploading a post, those 3-4 different ways of doing a story, they've got different ways of engaging. Now, I'm only speaking from my personal brand and a few brands that I help engage with, but I feel like typing something is better than resharing something you've posted. I feel like what I've seen with myself and a couple of artists is when they've reshared something they've posted, it's not getting much engagement. But when they've posted the actual video onto the story rather than a reel that's connected, it's engaged even more. So I feel like it's actually uploading the actual asset to story rather than sharing a post, which is an interesting thing. But I feel like just try these things out. You'll know when it's too much.
Yeah. So what's your favorite platform, would you say?
Insta's been my go-to from early. I'm trying to kind of build my YouTube now. I feel like YouTube in the last like few months, it's been remarkable the type of reception I've had on YouTube. I feel like that's where and plus like that is the only platform that's really focused on monetizing you. Really focused on monetizing you. So like I feel like that if people had that same strategy that they had with Instagram on YouTube Shorts, like I've had more views on my YouTube Shorts than I've had on my long form YouTube, which is crazy. So yeah, I feel like YouTube and Insta are like.
And how do you feel about TikTok, like especially for artists? Like, you know, everyone obviously jumped on it. People got huge success. You know, some artists absolutely love it, and then others are just like, it's not for me. Like, what's your kind of feeling about it?
Like, all platforms are really important. I feel like TikTok is really accelerated for search. So like discovering, it's important because like it's hard to discover people on other platforms. I feel like TikTok is only accelerated for discovery, which is a really important tool, but it shouldn't be your only tool in your belt. I feel like diversifying like what your connection and communications on other platforms. And yeah, I think TikTok is really important, but I feel like so many people are 100% focused on there. Like for me, my end goal is about conversion of stuff like when it comes to content. I feel like that's not spoken about much. Like, and I was when I talk about shelf life when it comes to content, that's something I talk about a lot to people. That's like my terminology. It's the shelf life is only on these platforms, you know. Where when in music, the most important thing is like you want someone to buy your merchandise, you want someone to stream your music, you want someone to come to your show. Like that's where people need to be thinking, because everyone's focused on people are focused more on creating the content rather than creating the catalog of music. Like let alone anything with content in these platforms, music has to be numero uno. If the catalog is not there, nothing else will fall into place for you. I feel like the gold rush right now is making content for music. However, what I've also realized is testing music as content gives you data points for you to release music and then do the push. And that's how businesses are being built now as well.
100%. And is there, like, which artists would you say are doing like amazing campaigns in terms of their content strategy at the moment?
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 American ones. and one in the UK, and I'm a bit biased because I've been working closely with him. So the two from America, one is La Russo. He's a independent artist, but the way he's focused on like monetizing his audience, like he's just gives gems out. Like, this is how I've done a show. This is how I put a marketing plan together. Like, he's the type of artist that also shows you the process behind that content, which is so interesting, and that form of like self-learning and independence. Haley Cox, I think her name is. She's got this like natural feel to her music. Like, she'll sit in the park with her legs crossed on this picnic thing, with the focus right connected to her Mac and then the microphone, and then singing her heart out. Like, there's just something about that which is like, I'm just like, yeah, I rate that. You know what I'm saying? Compared to a rope being pulled, you know what I'm saying? And the third has to be Tejon Lewis, because I've been working really closely. Like, I've been even like the way he's been doing his content is like, it's not directly his music, but it's how his music is placed, and that's what we've been experimenting on. But there isn't other artists at the top of my head I can't think of, but I've been seeing a lot more natural cadence to music, and how I feel like it's about music placement in the content rather than the music driving the content. That's an important thing. Like, we're seeing that with like with Top Boy, like when the scene is happening, like the music playing on the radio, someone playing Spotify, or when they're at a dance and then the music's playing. That as content is more vital than the music driving the actual content piece. And I feel like more artists need to kind of step back from them being the face of that content as well. Like, create narratives around that piece. Create like what Smiler does with his music and stuff, like creating these iPhone films and stuff, 17-minute films or whatever. Like, there's different ways to place your music rather than just making it a driver.
I think that's just brilliant advice. And like, on that note, what would your kind of like top piece of advice for artists be in 2025?
Cut off what's not working, double down on what's working, and just keep experiment on the platforms, and mostly like just envision who your audience is, who the person listening is, how they're listening to it, where they're listening to it, what time of day, like what's their feeling. That helps you direct like what you're building and what your marketing plan is.
Amazing. So I just feel like you've had an incredible journey. Like, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Like,
me.
you know, as you said, not gatekeeping, you've given all the gems today. And I, on the last note, would just love to hear, like, what advice would you give to your younger self, you know, at the beginning of your journey or even before then, looking back now?
Fail faster and experiment quicker.
Mhm.
That's what I would say. That's it. There's nothing else. I just fail faster, experiment quicker, and just network more. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you so, so, so much. It'd be great to have you. And would you just like to tell the viewers, where can they find you? How can they keep following your journey? And, you know, making sure that they've bullets and bits of work.
You can find me on any platform, Armzy Bam, ARMZY BAM.